Okay, we're good. You can pin it to you. It should hear you.
We going to edit this too? Are we going to edit this too?
No, we're not.
We could get Kinley on that.
We could get Kinley on that. Okay.
Okay, good morning everybody. How are we feeling?
Good.
Good.
Nice.
Okay, so today we're talking about Susan Sontag. She was an American author, social critic, and activist. She was born on January 19th, 1933 to Jack and Mildred Rosenblatt. So she was originally Susan Rosenblatt. But when she was 5, her father, who ran a fur trading business in China, died of tuberculosis. They moved from the Lower East Side in New York City to Tucson, Arizona, and eventually to LA after her mother remarried to a Navy captain whose last name was Sontag, and she changed her name to Susan Sontag. She was of Lithuanian and Polish descent, Jews who came from Austria. In the 1930s, she was primarily with her grandparents, as both her mother and father were in China. The 40s was Tucson, Arizona, and eventually LA, where she graduated from high school at 15 and went on to do a semester at UC Berkeley before transferring to the University of Chicago. In the 50s, she married Philip Reif, her 27-year-old professor, while she was 17, after 10 days of dating.
What?
That lasted for 8 years. For an academic year, she taught English at the University of Connecticut and went on in the later 50s to earn her master's in philosophy from Harvard. David Reif, her husband, was born in David Reif was born in 1952, her son. And he goes on to be a prominent figure in chronicling her life, and got together her last bit of writing in 2023 and published that as On Women.
Yes. Okay. Can you open the door? Somebody's going to interrupt us.
Doors.
Do you want me to pause that? No.
Okay. Continuing. In the 60s, her essays started getting published in various magazines. In 1966, she published her first collection of essays, Against Interpretation and Other Essays. In the 70s, she continued her work in literary circles. She published Illness as Metaphor and On Photography. Her work as a professor continued at Columbia, I believe. In the 80s, she published Under the Signs of Saturn and AIDS and Its Metaphors in 1989. That's when she met Annie Leibovitz while being photographed for the press for AIDS and Its Metaphors. In the 90s, she published one of her last novels, In America, and The Volcano Lover. In 2000s, she becomes open about her bisexuality, and this is later revealed with interviews with Annie Leibovitz. She published her last work while alive regarding the pain of others, and she died in 2003 of cancer. Okay, and then let's move. So that's a photo of her while she was young. This is her son, David, and her husband, Philip, before they divorced in 58. This is Annie Leibovitz, a famous photographer in her own right. This is Benjamin Moser. In 2020, his biography of her won the Pulitzer Prize, and this really brought her back into the limelight after her passing. And what's interesting about him is he had special access by her estate to a box of her journals that aren't available publicly until 2029. So that gave us a lot of insight on her thoughts about her mother. These are her works, her most noted ones at least. So this is Against Interpretation and Other Essays. One big thing she pushed for, one big essay is that interpretation ruins art. and we should follow our inherent feelings towards art rather than trying to dissect it into something we think it means. One moment. Here's a quote. What situation could prompt this curious project for transforming a text? History gives us the materials for an answer. Interpretation first appears in the culture of late classical antiquity, when the power and credibility of myth had been broken by the realistic view of the world introduced by scientific enlightenment. So, as we know in the 1800s, there's a big push in France for enlightenment. Beyond religion, Voltaire was a major figure in that. Essentially that the church has its place, but to move on as a society, we must start thinking for ourselves as well. And that's when she believes that we went off from just feeling an inclination to art and started like analyzing it for what it could mean. In the 70s, she wrote on photography, and this, I believe, is her most noted work of all. She talks about how to photograph something as a soft murder, because we take away its like value as something of like, I don't know, emotion and empathy, and we try and give it an artistic view.
Oh, that's interesting. A soft murder.
Yes. And it's really beautiful because in her later life, her main partner was Annie Leibovitz, a photographer, but she was a critic of photography and like what it's done. And this continues on throughout her writing after she makes this apparent. I'm going to go back in time into 1964. So she wrote mostly about war, aesthetics, and culture, and illness. So 1964, she wrote about on camp. Okay. So camp is an aesthetic, and it's partly something bad being for the sake of it being bad, like not in technicality good. So Notes on Camp explores queer culture and art. So Oscar Wilde was camp because like he was gaudy, he was over the top. Tiffany lamps, which are very like stained glass forward, are camp. Swan Lake, the musical, is camp.
Okay, so camp is like a term used for those types of people or things or productions?
Yes.
It's like a slang, like that's very camp.
Yes.
Ah, okay, I
And
see.
So from like early 1900s, late 1890s, aestheticism wasn't really like talked about intellectually until Susan kind of brought it up in the 60s again. And this is a quote from On Camp, which was published in December 1964 in the Partisan Review. A sensibility, as distinct from an idea, is one of the hardest things to talk about. But there are special reasons why camp in particular has never been discussed. It's not a national mode of sensibility, if there be any such. Indeed, the essence of camp is its love of the natural, of artifice and exaggeration. And camp is esoteric, something of a private code, a badge of identity even, among small urban cliques. To talk about camp is therefore to betray it. Oh,
No,
move back.
sorry.
That was, okay. So she talks about aesthetics and interpretation and art. And she says that in place of hermeneutics, we need an erotics of art. And that's the closing line of Against Interpretation. Because hermeneutics is the branch of knowledge that deals with interpretation. And erotics is our primal, like, desires towards things. So she's calling us to cast aside our highbrow interpretations in favor of our natural urges and follow art's inherent provocations. So, through the 80s, she still wrote. She wrote on Under the Sign of Saturn and AIDS and its Metaphors. Because through the late 70s and 80s, she was writing about illness and like pain. But in the 90s, it's really funny because there's this other intellectual that was calling herself like the Susan Sontag of the 90s, and this was in 92, and she thought that Susan Sontag had flopped, had gone out of the public eye and wasn't worth reading anymore and wasn't like writing good anymore. And like in 92 she published this, like she was on a talk show talking terrible about her, and Susan Sontag like talked back like about like basically like didn't know she existed until this, but that's cool, I guess. So then, ironically, and kind of in spite of what this intellectual was saying, in the 1993, Sarajevo in Bosnia was under siege. And Anna Leibovitz and Susan Sontag traveled there and tried to revive art in spite of war to keep spirits up. I add this last minute, but this is Annie Leibovitz's most famous photograph of Sarajevo under siege. Smear of blood and a child's bicycle. And Susan, like from 93 to 96, did so much in Sarajevo that the made her an honorary citizen and named a plaza after her. Could you move back?
I'll move back.
Yes. So that was the 90s, and this really inspired a lot of her war work. And her last publication was regarding the pain of others. She writes about war and talks about how it's inherently male, and from the very beginning, male toys are, toy soldiers, stuff like that, and talks about this one man's work of like photo book, starting with like toy soldiers going on to like fields of like mass graves of soldiers. And it's a really good book, and didn't write much on that, so go for it. This is just a video of her talking, like more in a feminist sense, and it gives you good context on her speech patterns and like how she like speaks.
Susan Sontag, I want to ask a very quiet question I want to ask a very quiet question to Norman and to Diana also. That obviously applies to the others. Norman, it is true that women find, with the best of will, the way you talk to them patronizing. And one of the things is your use of the word lady. When you, and this is what I want to ask Diana, when you said, Diana Trilling, foremost lady literary critic, if I were Diana, I would like to be introduced that way, and I would like to know how Diana feels about it. I don't like being called a lady writer, Norman. I know it seems like gallantry to you, but it doesn't feel right to us. It's a little better to be called a woman writer. I don't know why, but words count. We're all writers, we know that. Well, how about a woman doctor, a woman lawyer? Yeah, I mean, if you were introducing James Baldwin, you wouldn't say our foremost Negro writer. And we certainly wouldn't say a man writer, and so on. And a lot of it.
Susan,
No, I really ask you this,
Susan,
not in an argument.
this work with mass. I will never use the word lady again in public.
Susan, you put the question to me too. I don't like it, and I recognize the point you're making very well. But sometimes I think that it's like saying lady runner or lady high jumper or something of that kind. Within the culture, it has that peculiarity, doesn't it? And so I permit it on that basis. I don't really like it.
I think you ought to object to it.
Cynthia, he didn't say a housewife who writes.
So that's her speaking. I have some
I see
final
why
points.
you put that.
I'm sorry that this has been kind of jumbled. So I'll give you the full quote from On Photography and how that relates to regarding the pain of others. So in On Photography, she writes about how it can desensitize one to war and violence. In that quote, to photograph people is to violate them by seeing them as they never see themselves, by having knowledge of them that they can never have. It turns people into objects that can be symbolically possessed, just as a camera is a sublimation of the gun. To photograph someone is a subliminal murder, a soft murder, appropriate to a sad, frightened time. And then I say that the soft murder mindset contrasts with her lover Annie Leibovitz's entire livelihood. This use of photography as murder is a common theme in her writing, as noted in her last book regarding the pain of others, where she writes about how images of war should spark reaction and emotion, not be seen artistically. And yeah, basically it. Oh, I have one final statement. So I read this article about how Susan Sontag, it's too far in the past for us to really re-examine what she's written, but she is too close, no, she's too far in the past for us to remember what she's written and to like utilize it. But she's too close to us to see the value in trying to like go back. Like Voltaire, right? We don't, he doesn't know about an iPhone because he died in the 1800s, 1700s. He didn't really so he couldn't relate to anything, but we still see how society has progressed and how many of the things are the same. So we take from what he's written and interpret it into a modern sense. But Susan only died, 20 years ago, and she wrote a lot of stuff that does correlate to now, but,
She never saw it happen.
yes. And then, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Bravo. Well done. Are you gonna print your notes for me
I will.
so I can read them on the plane?
Mhm.
Okay. Say bye to all your people.
Bye, everybody. Sorry you have to watch this.